at least in the English language, started because a Spanish website called La Quinta Columna claimed to have a study produced by Spanish researchers plural, that is, and from that study, they claimed that there was definitive proof, not only that graphene oxide was in the Pfizer vaccine, but that it was essentially the main ingredient constituting more than 90% of the Pfizer vaccine's contents. And I think it may be best, actually, before I get into that specific study, we're going to be looking at the study. We're going to be looking at the claims that from this man, Ricardo Delgado Martin, who is the founder and lead guy at this Quinta Columna website. We're going to be seeing what he says about the study and some different things that he has done with the information in the study that I find, of course, this is about drawing your own conclusions, right?
She accuses Ricardo of saying that there's no mRNA in there. Something he doesn't do. So again, more evidence she hasn't been watching his videos, or she's going to say.
Taken his claims to say there's no mRNA, for example, in the Pfizer vaccine, when in fact the Spanish study.
He does not say there's no mRNA in there.
¿Qué más hay en la vacuna?
Hay una tracita de RNA que no se corresponde con, digamos, el componente princes de la misma.
This is someone who's presenting themselves anyway as highly educated and so I do have 2 degrees from when I graduated from university, a bachelor's of arts and a bachelor's of science. Yeah, so there's 2 patents that I've been able that I've seen floating around about graphene oxide in a vaccine, as I mentioned.
Okay, she says there's 2 patents that she's been able, and then she stops and she says floating around. So what she means is she's seen these 2 patents posted, presumably on a BitChute channel or something.
So there's 2 patents that I've been able that I've seen floating around about graphene oxide in a vaccine. As I mentioned, they are from China. The patents are in Chinese.
When she says able, that means actual research. Well, just takes a couple of seconds, because Google patents, obviously Google are going to put their own patents top on search results, so people are going to find them a lot easier. So it's, if you're going to do a little bit of research, just a couple of, maybe a minute's worth of research it took me to go onto Patent Scope and put graphene vaccine into the search engine, and it will come up with 7 patents for graphene based vaccines. The point of showing the patents was just to show what they can do. Not to try and find the actual patent for whatever the military were doing, because it wouldn't be anything visible for us. It'd be a black project.
So there's 2 patents that I've been able that I've seen floating around about graphene oxide in a vaccine, as I mentioned, and I think this is a really important case study and why it's so important to verify sources of information, the evidence cited, read the source documents, and then come to your own conclusions about them, and not just depend on someone, in a video telling you what's what without you actually going and reading this stuff by yourself. And I think this is just really a very important example of how crucial that is right now. I think this is a really important case study.
Important that we don't get pulled into things that we already think, that we already feel happening. And we talk about confirmation bias a lot on this show. And so today we're going to go over the full breadth of the information. I try to avoid patting you on the back, going, look, we were right. But yet we're both being censored left and right, up and down anyway. So do it again today.
Yeah, it's all right though. When you're, of course, this is about drawing your own conclusions, right? Researchers in the US and specifically China, or in China specifically for vaccines, and there are patents produced by Chinese researchers that are about using graphene oxide in COVID-19 vaccines. But as you'll see in a second, both of those are pending. So the claim that that particular patent was used by Pfizer doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion, because
who she set up a load of straw men, and this is another one she set up. The Ricardo or La Quinta Columna never said that patent or any of the patents related to graphene oxide that they were doing it. In fact, La Quinta Columna came out and said that they thought the patent was fake.
About using graphene oxide in COVID-19 vaccines, but as you'll see in a second, both of those are pending. So the claim that that particular patent was used by Pfizer doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion, because.
So she's implying there, and surely everyone who watches that is going to agree that someone related to. Okay, so if you didn't know, La Quinta Columa, myself, and a few others, I think, well, certainly me and them, we found out that this was a false patent. This is July the 12th, again, long before Whitney turned up on July the 24th with all these false accusations. But La Quinta Columa comments on the mysterious patent, the potentially false patent on the use of graphene oxide. Potentially false patent on the use of graphene oxide as a carrier in vaccines appears a few hours ago. Remember, I had evidence as well. I did a video about it. This is the patent she's talking about here. Yeah, they're not saying what she's saying.
So the claim that that particular patent was used by Pfizer doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion, because
they're saying the exact opposite. They're saying it's a false patent. But we do believe, because we found out from investigating the source and doing some proper research, yeah? See what I'm saying here? Proper research. That's what we found. We found that this is what we found. We found that this was only called 13 hours ago. As of July the 11th, it was only called 13 hours ago. I also found out on the Wayback Machine that it had only just appeared in around this time period, around these couple of days in July. So this was a false patent put up. Yeah, and who's commenting on it? Who's making a big deal and making a
in vaccine from the existing research.
For those on the podcast, those are all 2020. I find that very interestingly relevant. Like, go on. I just point is that this is
well, this is talking about, for example, recent progress, and this is of August 2020. This is, and I think between, these pending patents using graphene oxide for COVID-19 vaccines and the U.S. Army one, this really points to yes. So anyway, here's another study about the toxicity of graphene in human lung cells, for example. And so, this is probably something that we shouldn't be using in the human body without further testing. If a turbid aqueous solution.
Can I ask, just in the same vein of discussion for verification, how do we know for sure that the Pfizer vaccine is in fact white? Right? Is that something that's been? Go ahead.
Well, from what I understand, yeah, but it's definitely not black. I saw from the vaccines I've seen, there's one that's milky white. I think it was Pfizer, but there are some that are like clearer and stuff. But I haven't seen any vaccine that's like black or dark brown yellow. And those are the color that graphene oxide tends to be in high concentrations. You can go and look this up for yourself.
It's transparent. Using reduced graphene oxide as a transparent electrode. Okay, highly conductive and transparent reduced graphene oxide. Graphene oxide films are transparent to visible light. We've got a 99.5% absorption signal when analysed by spectroscopy. So that's what they mean to be to set the context here. So it's anyway, the first thing is to specify that when we refer to percentages of this magnitude, 99 and a bit percent, etc., this refers to the absorption signal that it has when analysed by spectroscopy. In other words, not all of the vial is just graphene, but when you purify the content to look for graphene, you realise that the signals that are received from what you're analysing are in the 99%. That is, you see liquid there, but not all the liquid is graphene. The liquid is diluted with other things that we will discuss later. Because there are living things in the vaccines, and we'll have to specify this in due course. Okay, so these guys are focusing on graphene, but they know there's other stuff in there, of course. So
telling you what's what without you actually going and reading this stuff by yourself. That's why, at TLAV, someone, in a video, error is discovered, it's best to own up to it. And if it's in the case of this particular group manipulating a translation potentially or something like that, or in this particular instance, you chose not, for whatever reason, did not go and read the source material and trusted this person because they seemed genuine to you and they had all these qualifications and whatnot, that's okay. It happens. Okay. For TLAV and Unlimited Hangout, and also, when you do your shows, the show notes or the links will
Buy me a coffee, PayPal. Super U Mars, a bit shoot Odyssey. Good God, I could never do that. Okay, this is a big operation. These are the problems. Just in a quick summary, these are some of the main issues. As far as deception is concerned, first of all, what's happening in this video is far worse. But what is far worse than anything they're accusing anyone else of? So let's have a look at some of the main concerns. She actually says in this video that these are, quote unquote, these are the only photos in the mix. Right? She's talking about one photo, which she thinks Ricardo has either accidentally mislabeled or intentionally mislabeled to make his point stronger to start with.
Right.
Okay, this is the only picture of graphene in the mix here.
I can go back and show that there's no deceit going on here. If you go back a month and have a look at this, or go back further than that, you can see that Ricardo's talking about the correct photos. They're all having a discussion about the correct photos, and they've got the report next to them, so it's very clear what they're talking about here. So long before Whitney turned up on July the 26th, is it July the 26th, July the 24th, long before Whitney turned up and accused them of deception, I can go back to at least July, the start of the month, 24 days ago, and prove to you that there's no deception going on here. Everything's in order. Here he is here. So her assumption that there's deception going on is debunked by the fact that this is a month old. It's on Orwell City here, and it's displaying the images she wants displayed. The literature example by the vaccine example. Look. And that's Ricardo speaking, isn't it?
Igualmente utilizando la técnica o la microscopia electrónica de transmisión. Aquí ven ustedes a la izquierda la muestra de Ricardo Delgado.
So she didn't fact check that.
This is the one from the literature. It tells you what study it's from.
Right.
Okay, not this study. It's from a study published in the Nature Nanotechnology journal. And this is a confirmed picture of graphene. This is the picture from the sample at 500 nanometers. There is no picture of graphene from the literature at 500 nanometer magnification, just 200. Okay. And here again, this is at 1 micrometer, 500 nanometers, 200 nanometers. These are the pictures he has. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I will return to, I just think this is really critical to point out because this to me shows dishonesty. And I think that's really important. Okay, so this is 200 and this is 500. These are both samples from the vaccine, but they went and labeled this graphene.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, so these are both of the sample, not of the graphene that's proof that for sure is graphene.
Yeah, so here's the for sure graphene at 200 nanometers.
Right.
And here's the 200 one from the sample. Okay, he took the 200 one from the sample and the 500 one. And so you can see that this was in the study labeled as the vaccine. I will go back to the PDF to show you.
Hmm. So just to be absolutely clear, that is done by the author of that website, or is that done
You'll
by...
see I can show you in the video where Delgado Martin does it. But...
And that's Ricardo speaking, isn't it?
Igualmente utilizando la técnica o la microscopia electrónica de transmisión. Aquí ven ustedes a la izquierda.
But just for comparison, see, this is the 500 one that clearly says sample RD1.
Okay, so are Orwell City and are they being are they being dishonest? Because I'm going back here a month ago now on their blog, and we've got here the correct images. I mean, this is what they're displaying here. That is the literature image at 200 nm, and that's the vaccine. So long before Whitney came along, they were displaying the correct images on their website. So this is there's no deception going on. If you
La que compara
and this is Ricardo here. He's comparing the right images now. Here he is here. So her assumption that there's deception going on is debunked by the fact that this is a month old. It's on Orwell City here, and that, it's displaying the images she wants displayed. The literature example by the vaccine example. Look.
nuestra muestra con una imagen,
And that's Ricardo speaking, isn't it?
una imagen de la literatura, igualmente utilizando la técnica o la microscopia electrónica de transmisión. Aquí ven ustedes a la izquierda la muestra de Ricardo Delgado y a la derecha la muestra sacada de la literatura. Lo único que difieren es que esta está a 500 nanómetros, pues...
So there you go. I've just shown you a video with, you can clearly hear Ricardo in the background, and he's comparing the correct, he's comparing the images. He's a month old, so there's no deception going on here, and it's here for all. I'll put the link below so you can see for yourself.
And the question is open as to whether it was intentional or unintentional.
This is on their blog, Orwell City, and this is scrolling back. To June the 30th. So a month. Just scrolling back a month. Yeah, there it is again. So yeah, and there's the report. So there's the report. Yeah, and there's the honest images. So despite what she's saying, there is no dishonesty going on here. Everything is in order.
So it's
Right.
Okay, this is the only picture of graphene in the mix here. So anyway, and to start off, the title says detection of graphene oxide in aqueous solution. And here it says Comirnaty, which is the European brand name for the Pfizer vaccine. So the Pfizer vaccine in Europe is sold under the brand name of this. And RD1 is what they label the sample from the Pfizer vial as throughout this study. Ricardo Delgado Martin from the Quinta Columna has requested the lending of services of research by the University of Almeria to look for, to detect graphene in an aqueous solution. So this study was essentially commissioned. We don't know if Delgado Martin paid this researcher, but it definitely seems that way because, professionals in academia generally don't do these sorts of studies for free unless they're really good friends or who knows. But, it requires time and materials and things like that. So these, in this case, this is not just Spanish researchers independently researching this. This is them being commissioned for this particular study. So this is the second page, okay?
Right.
This background, okay? And in most scientific papers, this is much longer than this, okay? This is quite short, but anyway, it says, the microscopic study of the samples supports solid evidence of the probable presence of graphene derivatives. From what we saw above, I don't really know if that's true, but anyway, he says, so there's solid.
We don't know. That's the frustrating part is that we don't know for sure. And
I wouldn't say it's solid evidence. I would say, maybe there's something there, but I think it's a stretch to say solid evidence. If you want to say probable presence or potential presence, that's one thing, but saying solid evidence, man. Anyway, let me read this whole sentence again because this last bit is pretty crazy. So the microscopic study of the sample, provides solid evidence of the probable presence of graphene derivatives, even if the microscopy did not provide a conclusive result.
Good God. I mean, even the fact that you're probable and certain in the same, you can't do that. And this is what all science tends to do. It's like, anyway, you know what I'm going to say. That just drives me crazy. That's a ridiculous sentence.
Yeah, it's a little extreme. Anyway, so it says the definitive identification of graphene and graphene oxide and reduced graphene oxide in sample RD1 requires that structural characterization through the analysis of the spectral patterns, which I mentioned earlier, they couldn't do, right? That's necessary to definitively identify graphene in the sample, and that didn't happen.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, so that's basically what that says. And then
all of that's been ignored, so bear that in mind. This is a very, very selective critique.
Good God. I mean, even the fact that it's probable and certain in the same, you can't do that. And this is what all science tends to do. It's like, God. I mean, even the fact that it's probable and certain in the same, you can't do that. And this is what all science tends to do. It's like,
do you see what he said there? He said even the fact that probable and certain are in the same sentence. Probable and certain weren't in the same sentence. Solid and probable were in the same sentence, but not certain. Solid and certain. Certain is stronger than solid. Solid's pretty good, but certain is certain. And she's not going to correct him. And she's arguing about the word, ironically, she's arguing about the word solid. Yet the actual sentence says, we have found, but she says probable's okay. But the actual sentence says, we have found solid proof of probable evidence. Yeah, so that's solidly probable, Whitney. Solidly probable, not solid.
But anyway, it says, the microscopic study of the samples supports solid evidence of the probable presence of graphene derivatives. From what we saw above, I don't really know if that's true, but anyway, he says, so there's solid.
We don't know. That's the frustrating part, is that we don't know for sure. And
I wouldn't say it's solid evidence. I would say, maybe there's something there, but I think it's a stretch to say solid evidence. If you want to say probable presence or potential presence, that's one thing, but saying solid evidence, anyway, let me read this whole sentence again, because this last bit is pretty crazy. So, the microscopic study of the sample, provides solid evidence of the probable presence of graphene derivatives, even if the microscopy did not provide a conclusive result.
Good God. I mean, even the fact that it's probable and certain in the same, you can't do that. And this is what all science tends to do. It's like, anyway, you know what I'm going to say. That just drives me crazy. That's a ridiculous sentence.
So you're both pretending you can't read a sentence. It all comes down to this one sentence, this whole 2-hour video, and both of them completely misread and misrepresent the sentence. Amazing.
Anyway, you know what I'm going to say. That just drives me crazy. That's a ridiculous sentence.
Yeah, it's a little extreme. Anyway, so it says the definitive identification of graphene and graphene oxide and reduced graphene oxide in sample are many different fields of science for a significant.
And even if it did say certain, it would still only be certainly probable, like definitely probable. Is that possible? Yes, it's definitely possible. Definitely possible. It means it's possible. Yeah, she misrepresents the final. They both misrepresent the final statement, which is what this whole 2-hour video is about. Basically, it's about whether or not Whitney is happy with the conclusion of the university report that this is probable evidence of graphene oxide, possible evidence of graphene oxide, solid evidence of graphene oxide, or certain evidence of graphene oxide. Well, certain is a word that this guy here, I think his name's Ryan, he makes up. He just makes up the word certain. It's not in the line at all. It's solid. It actually says there is solid evidence of probable graphene oxide. Okay, so it's solidly probable. She emphasizes the word solid when she's emphasizing the wrong word here. It is actually saying what she wants it to say. It's saying it's probable. It's solidly probable.
He is saying that this particular image here, he's saying it's similar to graphene oxide, meaning that the picture in the literature that is shown here.
I say, just to clarify, the professor who did this study is saying that it looks similar to graphene oxide. That is exactly what we're saying.
Well, he's saying the picture of the samples that are in this that we've already talked about. Remember, I already read this. Present a high degree of similarity.
So just to clarify here, Whitney's already said that in her opinion, it doesn't look like graphene oxide. But she is actually saying here that in the professor's opinion, it does look like graphene oxide. So she's saying it doesn't, and the professor who did the study is saying it does. Yeah, just to clarify.
This is from December 2020. as its potential graphene-based materials to combat COVID-19. So you can see clearly that before we even get into whether or not it's in this injection, it's something that's been discussed. You would argue that it seems like a very valid thing to be concerned about if that's what's being discussed in December 2020. Being discussed in December 2020.
Just looking at this morning, since that's the one that I was. This is one. Do you mind if I start with that?
You're welcome to. I have my own stuff lined up, but you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll just point this one out, and then we'll go to the ones. The only reason I'm pointing this one out is because it's been one that's been sent to me a lot, and this is this is exactly to your point, right? So whether or not you decide on this show after looking at the full information and cross-referencing and checking our translation.
See, it starts with the word potential, and this whole polemic that she's pushing here is potential. Yeah, here we have something a little bit more direct. Yeah.
Well, this is talking about, for example, recent progress, and this is of August 2020. I would argue.
They talk for an hour before they get into the facts. They talk for an hour before they actually get into the study. Here it is. Where is it? There, 48 minutes. There it is, 48 minutes. And that's when they start looking at the evidence. I would say present your evidence at the start and then talk for 2 hours. But if you talk for an hour and then present your evidence, by the time you get to 58 minutes, everyone's already made their mind up because they've been brainwashed by all these inappropriate laughs and all these smirks and all these implications here. She doesn't even mention the biggest smoking gun of the lot, which is the EU graphene flagship roadmap. There it is. 2 hours and no one mentions that. 2 hours and no one mentions that. Absolutely staggering. She says that Elon Musk's Neuralink is different to graphene when I've got evidence that it's exactly the same and they're both the same. They're talking about the same thing. No mention that Celeste Salome was actually the first person to break the graphene story over a year ago. They're saying this is La Quinta Columa were the first people to bring it into the mix. That was not true.
TEM, the transmission electron microscope images of the sample in general present a high similarity with pictures of graphene oxide from the literature. Okay, that's his conclusion.
Means we don't know for sure.
He says high similarity, but remember he was, it appears he was paid to do the study to find graphene in the what this says. So, and right after that, he told, it's, you can send me money by PayPal, in a sense, the censorship. And I know you feel that way about what happened recently with PayPal. Screw PayPal.
Yeah, indeed. And for those that don't know, we were just broadly and without any preamble, just removed from PayPal indefinitely.
What this says. So, and right after that, he told, it's, you can send me money by PayPal.
She has a go also at Ricardo Delgado for having a PayPal button on his account. Can I just make a little comment here about this? Because yeah, she did say that these studies cost money. To get professors, materials are involved and electronic microscopes and stuff. She did say that she thought Ricardo paid him for it.
So this study was essentially commissioned. We don't know if Delgado Martin paid this researcher, but it definitely seems that way because professionals in academia generally don't do these sorts of studies for free unless they're really good friends or who knows.
So he's got to get he's got to get some money from somewhere to pay for these things. It's not there can be no viable alternative media if people don't support it.
I'm with you on that, but I just think we don't know for sure. It could have been a dumb mistake, but I'm with you. I think it's obvious.
Well, that's not the only video where he does it, so it's a dumb.
I'm not sure, but it could be, but it's obvious. Yeah, that's what he just said. That's a sentence. I'm not sure, but it's obvious. That's about 5 minutes ago, this same guy was saying that's a ridiculous sentence. Yeah, and he just made up the word certain.
That he must have made multiple times.
I agree with you. 100%.
So I'm pretty skeptical here because remember, this isn't just some guy.
Yeah, it's just gone from I don't know to I agree with you 100%.
Who was like, ooh.
All the videos I'm looking at as I go back in the past, way before you turned up, Ricardo is comparing the correct image. So this is all another straw man.
Okay. Manipulations, yes. I'm with you on that, but I just think we don't know for sure. It could have been a dumb mistake, but I'm with you. I think it's obvious.
Well, that's not the only video where he does it, so it's a dumb mistake that he must have made multiple times.
I agree with.
Yeah.
I agree with.
that's a pretty big accusation, and I'm sure that look on your face there, you've just said something that was, a bit nasty. Shouldn't make up things about people. If you've got evidence, Whitney, of other videos, yeah, and you shouldn't just accept that she's telling the truth. If you've got evidence of other videos, and you may well have, but certainly we can't even find the original one, and no links are provided under this video, despite claims that links are provided for our own research, and we're supposed to do our own research. Yeah, there's no links to do our own research underneath here. Yeah, please present this evidence. So instead of just, this is a real major bomb that you've just dropped here.
Even before it's used or tested in a vaccine, even before it's used or tested in a vaccine. So anyway, here's another article talking about brains improved by graphene are on the horizon. Oxide in the vaccine claim that originated with La Quinta Columna have noted that graphene has toxicity issues within the human body. So this is an article that attempts to say it's a double-edged sword that well, we'll get there in a second, but there's actually a graphene brain machine interface being developed by a company that's also based in the Catalonia region of Spain as well. So there's some overlap there.
So Penguin X says a number of doctors are saying the same. Unfortunately, although I like Whitney's words, she clearly has not researched this subject, which is unforgivable because she's got over 10,000 views now, and that's a lot of people that are going to be put in jeopardy, in danger, if they believe her. She clearly has not researched something. Yeah, because the talk about the Chinese patents preventing any other company from using it in the vaccines is not relevant. There are dozens of patents. Graphene oxide nanoparticles are the issue here, and she doesn't even realize that the InBrain company have had this on the market since 2016. InBrain Neuroelectronics has had available commercially since 2016 an injectable graphene product designed to read and modulate brain activity using artificial intelligence, AI, to trigger adaptive responses for personalized neurological therapy.
And then again, we have yet another one about next generation neural interfaces with graphene. This is obviously most of the research done in the U.S. To be honest, with graphene in the human body tends to be focused on some sort of neurotechnology application. Well, we can stop there in terms of this interview. What I just really wanted people to see here is that he's definitively claiming that there's graphene oxide in this, and other interviews. I don't know if it's in this specific interview or other ones. He and other people say that this is the main ingredient, accounting for more than 90% of the contents of the Pfizer vial. Okay.
And the second part there was very definitive in the claim that this is the primary cause. It's interesting to argue that based on, there's just as much research showing that the spike protein can lead to the same problem, or that the mRNA or the nanoparticles, all these things. So it's interesting to kind of just skip over that,
dismiss those and say this is what's happening.
And that was one of the points you made, and I don't know if you want to get into that now, and I agree with this, that this seems to be an interesting way kind of laying shade for other things that are a big deal right now in this push, like as if we can just go, oh, well, mRNA is fine then, right? Nanoparticles are fine then, or at the very least implying that they're not the problem right now. And that raises a big red flag for me. Welcome to The Last American Vagabond. I have a planned show for you today, one that you always like to see, and that is when Whitney Webb is joining to talk about some really interesting topics, something that you've all been very interested in hearing about. And likewise, I've been researching and been interested in myself, which is graphene oxide, and this discussion about whether or not this is involved in the vaccine, within the vaccine, talked about masks. There's bigger discussions about graphene oxide as well that we've talked about in the past. So Whitney Webb is here to discuss this today about some interesting things that she's been seeing that will make this conversation a bit more broad. And it's important that we don't get pulled into things that we already feel happening. And we talk about confirmation bias a lot on this show. And so today we're going to go over the full breadth of the information that Whitney's seen and where we feel this claim really lies. We're also going to talk about some other things, a recent article of hers, the NSO discussion, as well as whatever else we get into to try to debunk and theorize about. So, Whitney Webb, how are you today? Always a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, doing well. Always great to be here. Hey, everyone.
Yeah, I always like our discussions because we end up, kind of just stumbling into things we're talking about, interesting conversations, and then we look back and go, oh, looks like we theorized correctly. And there's been a lot of that over our conversations, especially today with the disinformation dozen, with the cyber polygon. I mean, I try to avoid patting you on the back, going, look, we were right. But it's important to realize how incredibly correct you've been with pretty much the broad scope of your claims from the very beginning of all of this. I just have to say that because it's important for us to recognize. And some of these we're theorizing, we think based on their previous actions and what we know of them that this is what they will do. And sure enough, here we are. And yet we're both being censored left and right, up and down anyway. So do it again today.
Yeah. It's all right, though. When you're just trying to get out information you think is important and other people aren't covering, the censorship, especially in the last year and a half, tends to be a consequence of that. Oh, well, it's not like you or I are going to stop what we do because of that. It's honestly kind of motivating in a sense, the censorship. And I know you feel that way about what happened recently with PayPal. Screw PayPal.
Yeah, indeed. And
yeah.
For those that don't know, we were just broadly and without any preamble, just removed from PayPal, indefinitely suspended, as always. Not removed, but indefinitely on suspension, which is just a ridiculous legal gray area they put you in. But the point is that this is happening everywhere. And it's because of the truthful content that we're putting out, or at the very least, to be more objective content we're putting out, right? We believe what we're saying is true based on the facts, but at the end of the day, it's about being objective, right? And that's kind of a perfect way to dive into this conversation, because I've been really, really invested in talking about what we're not being told about the masks, about the injections, about damn near everything around this COVID-19 discussion. And I will stumble into conversations and see something and go, you know what? That's exactly what I thought was happening. But what's important in that moment is to make sure we go, am I going to believe it's correct just because I've already thought that was the case? Or am I going to stand back and be objective and try to challenge it, even though I think it's right? And this brings us into this graphene discussion about where we have a lot of people pushing this out. And I'm very interested, and I'm not dismissing it either. I just to put it out right out in the beginning, I'm always very skeptical about whether these conversations are put out in a fake way about something true. Right, that we know that happens. So when it really does come out, we go back, oh, that was that debunked conversation. So I'm interested to hear what he has to talk about, and I'm interested to see whether we find something in this. So go ahead and tell us your thoughts about this graphene oxide discussion, or would you like me to start with the video we talked about?
Well, I can start with sort of like a preface, right? Mm-hmm. So the origin of this claim really being promoted, I guess you could say, by certain figures in independent media,
which you've decided not to show us. But tell us about it instead. Yeah?
You 100%.
So I'm pretty skeptical here, because remember, this isn't just some guy who was like...
And after she's made that claim, completely unsupported and probably not true, he's just said, I agree with you 100%. So you can see where this is going in the end, can't you? Yeah? It's a case study.
Okay, because if you look at what, I'm not just saying we're the only ones that do this, okay, but you, Ryan, and myself, we cite our evidence, we tell you to go look up the stuff, read it for yourself, and come to your own conclusions. This is essential to do, okay, and this is a case study of just how important this is.
Okay. Manipulations, yes. I'm with you on that, but I just think we don't know for sure. It could have been a dumb mistake, but I'm with you. I think it's obvious.
Well, that's not the only video where he does it, so it's a dumb mistake that he must have made multiple times.
I agree with you.
And his manipulation of the images and that in these subsequent interviews, I find extremely alarming.
She means one images. So there's, as we know, there are dozens of images now we've got. She's talking about the one image which was apparently labeled incorrectly as a literature image, unless the mistake was with this document or there's some other reason. But she's trying to give the impression that he's manipulating lots of images. Now she's going to say now, in response to something he says, who playing the devil's advocate, that he is in lots of videos making this same mistake or deceitful comparison. Well, in that, but we've got no links to these videos, and of course, if these videos did exist, she would have presented them as evidence, because she admits herself her claim's not conclusive because she hasn't got enough evidence to say whether it was deceitful or just a mistake. Well, if she did have other videos of him saying this, I'm sure we'd be seeing them. And if you have, Whitney, can you supply us with the links and the links for this original one, because I can't find it.
I agree with you. 100%.
So I'm pretty.
As always, question everything. We're open to these possibilities, especially because of the patents and because of the scientific research saying we should use this for COVID-19 vaccines. Clearly, there's a concern there, but I think it comes down to the fact
but those patents are pending on this. The patents are pending, as we mentioned earlier, on graphene oxide being used in COVID-19 vaccines. Right. Okay.
What I was going to say there is,
well, this is a cautionary tale. Right. To people.
We've seen it happen every day.
So I would really encourage people watching, if you found our concerns about this compelling, and you are aware of people in independent media that you like, that have been promoting La Quinta Columna, I would encourage you to show this